And I thought about what I share with you tonight, and I realized I've given this sermon before. And I'm not going in my files because, I've been here for 20 years. I'm sure you don't remember that one from 8 years ago that I gave. I don't do that, Judy. I might repeat myself a lot because I forget what I said, but I never actually do that. But tonight I know that I have taught this and spoken about it and done it, but I want to do it again. And I want to lead with a preamble because it is that important. Many of you know I was born in Jackson, Mississippi. That's right, y'all, I was born in Jackson. I don't sound like it anymore. And I grew up as a rabbi's kid in that small Jewish community, and my summers were filled with an incredible Jewish experience. I went to Henry S. Jacobs Camp, which was in Utica, Mississippi. Now, during the non-summer months, the Jewish population of Utica was really small, but then in the summer, hundreds of Jewish children from all over the South would descend on Utica for 4 weeks of summer camp fun. It was an incredible experience. I started going as a staff kid in my 6 or 7. By 8 or 9, I was going for 4 weeks during the summer. And of course, this is one of those experiences. My older brother didn't get to go because he was allergic. I got to do it all on my own. And so I would go. And I went with some of my Jewish friends from school. I made some other new friends. I was just speaking with the rabbi who is in Alexandria right now, but will be departing and going to Knoxville, Tennessee. And we were talking about it because she's been on faculty at Jacobs Camp, whereas I've been on faculty at Coleman. We were discussing it a little bit because the people I knew at summer camp, it was 40 years ago, let's be honest, 40 years ago, are still very much involved in Jewish life, and it really is incredible to realize it had that impact on all of us. I share that because growing up, even as a rabbi's kid, I did not know the Birkat Hamazon. Do you all know when we use the Birkat Hamazon? It is the grace after meals. And it is something you do 3 times a day at Jewish summer camps, and that's kind of one of the places where a lot of kids from the Reform movement learned it. And it's a long, long song, a long, long prayer. It's actually a prayer upon a prayer upon a prayer. And when you're 8 and you've just finished and you want to get to song session and meal time and snack, because remember, we just ate, so it's a Jewish camp, so then you eat snack pretty quickly afterwards. You don't want a long prayer. So what do you do to make it fun? You bang on stuff, right? Hazan et ha'olam kulo betu betuchein bechesed rachamim. Rachamim, and there's banging, and then there's repeats, and there's all kinds of versions that are not the originally sanctioned Hebrew versions that might be inappropriate English language that kids, when they're at summer camp, will teach each other and sneak in. It's an experience. And I will tell you as a rabbi, I hear it and I'm like, oi. Don't you know the words? Yes, you should have kavanah, intention. Yes, you should have fun. But these words mean something. Say the words to mean something. You don't need to say, I swear I share some rather part of somebody's clothing. Okay? I'm like, as a rabbi, as a grown-up, and now it's like, why are you all doing this? But as a kid, you pound on the tables, you're slapping hands, you're doing repeats. It's the fun stuff, even more than the text sometimes, would catch your attention. And I share that with you because one of my strongest memories is that once a week, every week, we would get completely rowdy and over. This is a prayer, thanking God for the food we eat, and we are screaming some wild stuff. And I remember Macy Hart, and it probably wasn't every week, but I just remember it happened a lot. Macy Hart was the director, founder, I don't know if he was the founder, but he was the longtime director of Jacobs Camp, founder of the Museum of Southern Jewish Experience, the Institute of Southern Jewish Life, just an incredible human being who did a lot for Southern Jewry, and his kids were my age. And I remember Macy standing on a chair and screaming, "Stop you all!" And he would get everyone quiet, and then he would give us the speech. How dare you? It's a prayer. You have to have reverence. You shouldn't be pounding on the tables. It was great. It was like the best of Jewish guilt and Jewish love and Jewish parenting and Jewish camp. And we were all like, oh my God, how could we? And it was like, kalala, the curse got turned back into blessing. It was beautiful and it was powerful. I shared that with you though, because what happened? We would find that moment of reverence, we would take him to heart, we would believe it, but as the week went on, what happened? We'd get back into it's more fun and we're tired and we just want to get going and I want snack. They fed us well, by the way. And we would kind of lose that sense of reverence and focus and power of what the prayer really was, and Macy would have to stand on the chair and get us quiet and explain it again. This happened numerous times over those 4 summers that I spent at Camp Coleman. Not Camp Coleman, Jacob's Camp. Now, if some of the Camp Coleman people do watch my sermons, you can use this as proof that I have Coleman deep in my heart, because I've been on faculty. It's hard to believe that I've been on faculty at Camp Coleman more than I was a camper at Jacob's Camp. So I was a camper at Jacob's Camp, but I now go onto faculty at Camp Coleman. Oh, and I would assure you, in these days, we don't ever have to do anything like that at Camp Coleman. I just remember that ebb and flow. That there were times where we as human beings, there are things that capture our attention, our ways of moving through the world, and then there's something that draws us back into a better way, a more reverent way, a more caring way, a more graceful way, a more powerful way. And it's easy to get pulled into that silly, irreverent, fun, engaging place and then need to get back. It's that ebb and flow. I share that with you tonight because of the Torah portion. This is actually the Torah portion that I used for my senior sermon when I was at HUC over 20 years ago. It's Parshat Shemini. And it involves one of the most painful, stark, incredible stories of the Hebrew Bible. It's the story of Nadav and Abihu, the sons of Aaron. And all we are told in Leviticus is they went into the tent of meeting, the tabernacle, and they offered strange fire before God, and then God took their spirits, burning them from within. They died in that place. We don't know what they did to offer strange fire. We don't know, you can't even tell in the reaction if God was actually punishing them or not. There's a lot of ambiguity in the story. But there is Aaron in the courtyard, and Moses comes out and says to Aaron, your 2 sons, Nadav and Abihu, offered an offering of alien fire, and they died in the tabernacle. It is one of those things, it is one of those scenes. Imagine somebody coming to tell you that your 2 sons have died. And the Torah has something that is so powerful that we need to not hear. Torah says, Vayadom Aharon. Aaron was silent. It's extraordinary because it was 2 words. Vayadom Aharon. Aaron, in the face of learning of the death of his 2 sons, Aaron was silent. We don't know for how long. We don't know his body position. We don't know what Moses did. All we know is that he was silent. And it's an incredible, interesting silence. If you've been a Hebrew school teacher and the kids start talking, what do you say? Sheket bavakasha. Quiet, please. And of course at camp then they yell back, Sheket bavaka hey. That's camp for you. If you're a teacher and you want kids to be quiet so you can talk, you use the word sheket. That's not the word in Leviticus. Vayadom Aharon, Aaron, vayadom. Do you hear the root? Daled mem mem. Vayadom Aharon. Aaron was silent. It's the same root that's used for the silence that Elijah hears God in on Mount Sinai, on Horeb. Elijah's fleeing. He goes to Mount Sinai, to Horeb. He goes into a cave. There's a whirlwind. There's an earthquake. There's a fire. There's all of this natural disaster and noise. And it says that God was not in that. God was in the kol. Listen to the word, kol demama daka. The voice as demama, thin, narrow, tiny as a daka, as a reed. The still small voice that Elijah connects with is the same root as the silence that Aaron expresses when he hears of the death of Nadav and Abihu. I share that with you tonight to reintroduce, to get you thinking about the power of silence, not sheket, but demama. Maybe that we can find vayadom. There's a lot of shouting in our world. There's a lot. In fact, I found myself doing it. I was in the car. I was listening to NPR, and they were reporting about Israel, and I found myself in the car shouting at the radio because I disagreed with what the person was saying. Doesn't that tell you something? How many of us are shouting at the TV or the phone or the computer or the radio? God forbid, other people. It's been a lot of shouting. Very loud emails that I've gotten over the last few weeks. Very loud responses, and I want to give some of those emails over the last few weeks. It is so easy as a human being when we find ourselves in those moments, whether it's a moment of sadness and loss like Aaron, whether it's a moment of conflict and distress, it is so easy to want to fill the world with our voice in protest, in anger, in upset, in uncertainty, and anxiety. It is so easy to fill creation with our voice, responding and reacting to what we see. But I tonight remind you of Macy Hart standing on that chair to get us to stop, to refocus, to reset, because we need those chances to remember the power of reverence, of calm, of vayadom Aharon. Aaron was silent. We don't know, and I don't know if calm's the right word. What's the sound an aleph makes? It makes no sound, and yet it's there and present. I don't know how, and I don't know when, but I know that I need to work on that kind of silence. I'm going to guess that it will help you to just think about what is that silence of communing with God, of bringing in, there's a beautiful phrase in Isaiah. In Isaiah 6, Isaiah is out on a walk, and he looks up, and there's this incredible vision of God that he sees. There are wings and swords and feet and all sorts of stuff. He's having an amazing trip, and he says words you all know that we say in the morning service: Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzevaot Melech Haaretz Kevodo. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. That's the first part. Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzevaot Melech Haaretz. The whole world, Melech Haaretz Kevodo. The whole world is filled with his kavod, with God's glory, God's weight, God's mass. That's what Elijah feels at Mount Sinai. That's what Aaron brings to that moment. And it's so incredible because if you're reading Leviticus, you're like, oh, Aaron was silent. And you could just keep going. How do we create that weighted silence, not to argue, not to fight, not to battle, not to steady ourselves, but to vayadom, just to bring that silence as weight, as power, to stop. And stop ourselves, to stop the world, to let things stop, to settle, to get to where they need to be. Can we be listening for we need to create those silences, but also can we be aware? Can we be thoughtful? Can we be sensitive when somebody else is creating that silence, to honor it and to feel it? We have silent prayer here, and it is always interesting to me what that kind of silence feels like. How often it's easy to interrupt that silence with motion or commentary, or we got to get on to the next thing. I find myself even doing it. So I share with you that memory. Imagine someone standing up to say stop. And we have to do that every once in a while to reset ourselves. And tonight I share with you once again that powerful story. Because let us, not in, I hope, Kano Hura, God forbid, moments like Aaron experienced with the death of his two sons, but let us, like Elijah at Horeb, let us find those ways of bringing that kind of powerful, positive, full, kavod, weighty silences into our world. Let us find times and places to create that silence, to make that impact. Maybe that's the energy we need to turn the world in the right direction. Amen. Shabbat Shalom.